I'll never understand why people with time machines always give themselves so little time. You literally control time. Why wait till the last minute? Hey everybody, welcome to Mainely Movies. Today, I'm going to be talking about the 2015 sci-fi action sequel, Terminator Genisys. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. All my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all of that extra content. Terminator Genisys stars Arnold Schwarzenegger, Emilia Clarke, and Courtney, and was directed by Alan Taylor. It tells the story of Kyle Reese, a soldier played by Courtney, who's sent from the future back to 1984 on a mission to protect Sarah Connor. Upon arriving in the past, however, he discovers that things are quite different than he expected, and he has to contend with the altered past and its effects on the future he once knew. Even though Terminator Salvation is clearly the outlier of the franchise, with its future war setting and entirely new characters, I would argue that Terminator Genisys is the most unique film in the franchise. It manages to give us something new, despite being primarily composed of old pieces. It's a mind-bogglingly rearranged story that's ambitious in design and structure, but leaves something to be desired in execution. It feels a little ironic to call this movie the most unique film in the franchise, when much of the opening 15 minutes consist of literal shot-for-shot recreations of scenes from the original Terminator movie. But I promise you, this is not simply a remake. The more time we spend in 1984, the more subtle changes we notice, until the entire story gets flipped on its head and it becomes clear that the Terminator world we think we know is not at all what it seems anymore. If you thought the retconning in Terminator 3 was extensive, just you wait. There's a difference though. While the changes in T3 felt like a thrown together cheap attempt to keep an already completed story limping along, the changes here are the entire premise of the film. Time travel has always been a central component of the franchise, and the idea of a tangential timeline was something that was introduced all the way back in T2. It's been used to explain altered futures, so it makes perfect sense to use it for an altered past. The multiple timeline idea is pretty interesting, and never confusing to understand, but some things just don't piece together particularly well. Arnold Schwarzenegger reprising his role as the frequently funny T-800 is one of the highlights, and even though Emilia Clarke and Courtney both give good performances as Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese respectively, it's a little distracting not having Linda Hamilton and Michael Biehn in the roles, especially during the shot-for-shot scenes. Along those same lines, we get yet another actor playing John Connor. Much like with Christian Bale in Terminator Salvation, I think Jason Clarke's a good actor and gives a good performance, but he just does not feel like John Connor to me. In fact, this version of John Connor is easily my least favorite part of the movie. Although I still think the action in T2 is the best in the franchise, the action here might be the most entertaining. There are some creative stunts in this one, and it's frequently mixed with humor, thanks to Arnold Schwarzenegger, which results in a fun and slightly more lighthearted take on the Terminator franchise. The movie also expands on the franchise's underlying exploration of Terminator humanity in a way that's surprisingly touching, and really should have been the central pillar to the story. Instead, we get a fun but quite convoluted quasi-reboot of the franchise. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. Pro number one is the structure of this film. It does get a little sloppy, so I imagine quite a few people would put this under cons instead, but I actually really like the alternate/multiple timeline idea. It ties everything together in a way that's satisfying and mostly makes sense, while still offering something new to fans of the franchise. Some may view it as an unnecessary rewrite of the story, but considering we're 5 films into the franchise at this point, there's only so many ways to keep things fresh. The second pro is the action. It's big, it's exciting, and it's largely lighthearted, something we haven't really seen before in the franchise. It doesn't offer anything spectacular, but it's fun and certainly far more interesting than the generic shaky cam action of the previous film in the franchise. On the con side, my biggest issue is John Connor. Once again, I don't understand why he's constantly recast in this franchise. You'd think the part of John Connor is one that an actor would want to hold on to, and one that the filmmakers would want to keep consistent. Recasting frustrations aside, Jason Clarke presents us with an oddly calm, vacant rendition of Connor that's only exacerbated by the directions this plot takes his character. I think this film could have been greatly improved by a few tweaks surrounding Connor's role in this film. I'm gonna give Terminator Genisys 3 out of 5 paws. It's a fun and fairly interesting rejuvenation of the franchise that attempts an ambitious format but fails to follow through on it in a fully satisfying manner. I would recommend Terminator Genisys to casual fans of the Terminator franchise, especially if you've enjoyed any of the post-T2 movies. I imagine diehard fans of the first two films will be annoyed by the timeline shifts made in the story, but if you don't mind some change and are just looking for some fun, frequently silly action, you might enjoy this one. If you like Terminator Genisys, then I've obviously gotta recommend The Terminator, because this movie's essentially an alternate timeline version of that film. If you like the idea of future events impacting the past to impact the future and cause a tangential timeline, you should definitely check out Back to the Future Part 2 for some fun space-time continuum disruption. And for even more multiple timeline action, be sure to watch X-Men Days of Future Past. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1, have you seen Terminator Genisys? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, what's your favorite movie that involves a tangential timeline? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get a discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information out of this review, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe while you're at it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainly Movies, the way life should be.